All right, so let's start with the first one, which is consulting is for you if you enjoy learning at a fast pace about a variety of subjects, don't know what you want to do, and enjoy working with smart people to get an immediate impact. So what exactly is management consulting? So like I mentioned, when I grew up, I didn't even, all the way to college, I didn't know what a management consulting was or how to even describe what I do. But the best example I ever got was during my final round interview with McKinsey, a partner, one of the senior partners was the person who would tell me my favorite definition of it, which is I asked him at the end one of the questions, so how do you describe to your parents what you do? And he gave me this beautiful explanation that I always continue to give to other people. So he said that we're like business doctors. Businesses come to us with a problem, and like doctors, we find the root cause of the problem, and then we recommend a solution. I was like, oh, that's a beautiful analogy of how consulting works. And like a doctor, especially those in the US, we do an operation, we solve your problems, and then at the end, there's a bill. You don't know how big the bill will be, but there's a bill. And it's pretty unpredictable. So I thought the parallels were quite great in terms of why a management consultant is very similar to a business doctor. But what exactly does a management consulting do? And what is it like in the day of a consultant? In order for me to describe to you what consultants do day to day, I have to teach you two things. One, I have to teach you how companies work with management consulting. And then second, how management consultants work within the company that they are at. So first off, let's start with the company, which are our clients. So first off, usually a company will come to us with a problem or question. So imagine that McDonald's is thinking about launching a new burger in a new country, and they're deciding if they should launch this burger in a country. What they'll do is then they'll want to meet with us. So let's say if it's McKinsey or LEK or Accenture, they'll want to meet with a representative from the firm to talk about the issue. And then the representative, usually a partner, will come back to the firm, and then the firm will allocate a team and create an approach for how to solve the problem. And the team could be small, could be like as little as 1 or 2 people, or it could be as big as 12 people or even bigger and have sub teams. Sometimes, for example, with big mergers, you might have a team of 20 to 40 people that are subdivided up. Or it could be a really small project where it used to, one project I worked on was for a car rental company. It was just me and a partner. And then when the team is allocated, then they'll start to diagnose the problem and the question. So we get a lot of the stigma about we're just Excel monkeys. So that's pretty much where this comes in, is this whole stereotype that we work in Excel. So we do, which is we use a lot of the data to diagnose the problem and then to answer the question. And then finally, we get our second stereotype, which is that we are PowerPoint monkeys. And what that means is that we just turn the Excel into insights. So the fact that we use PowerPoint doesn't necessarily mean that we're PowerPoint monkeys or anything like that. So think about a lawyer. You wouldn't say that a lawyer's output is a Word doc. You wouldn't say they're a Word doc monkey. It's just that the contract, the output that they do is in a Word doc. So similarly, we do ours in a PowerPoint presentation format. And then eventually, both teams work together to solve the problem. So this whole idea that a consultant just takes a problem and leaves for 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, and comes back with a solution, not true. We work very closely with the client, sometimes on a daily basis, other times on a weekly basis. At most, I've seen is a 2 to 3 week basis, but you got to keep your client updated on what's happening with it. So there's no going out and doing your own thing. In fact, that's a recipe for disaster. But there's 3 things that you're always doing in consulting. 1, you're always thinking about the big problem that needs to be solved to help the company. Second, you're breaking this problem down into its structured parts to be solved. And then finally, you're working with your team and your clients to solve these sub-problems. So problem solving, structuring your approach, and solving problems is something you always do. So those 3 things. So keep that in mind as I walk through the second part of it, which is how management consultants work within their own firm. So in order to understand the average day of consulting, I need to teach you that there are 3 roles within consulting. There is the analyst, associate, consultant. So every single firm has their own title for this. Basically, this is the entry-level position for either a undergrad coming out of school, a JD, MBA, PhD, MD, postdoc. You'll start off as an analyst, associate, or consultant. Title changes within the firm, but the same idea. Second, you have a manager. This is someone who's usually been in the analyst, associate, consulting role for a few years. It can be as short as 2 to 3 years if you are really good, or a little bit more, so let's say 5 years. Usually this person has been with the company and they have been an associate themselves. Then finally, after manager, you have a partner who we'll talk about his role, who oversees the client relationship. So again, these are 3 of the category roles. There are titles in between each of these roles, but to keep it simple, just imagine that there's 3 of these roles. So first, you have the partner. So the partner, imagine this, for those of you who are coming in from a business background, it's kind of like imagine the CEO of the teams that will be going on, or if you're coming from lab, imagine this is your PI. They'll have usually a bunch of projects going on serving different clients. So for example, our partner could be serving 1, McDonald's as a client. 2nd could be serving, let's say, ExxonMobil. And then 3rd could be serving PacSun as a client. So different fields. But he's maintaining or she's maintaining this relationship with each of these clients. But he or she cannot manage all of these at once, otherwise they don't sleep. So they have managers. So imagine these are postdocs, or these are 3rd or 4th year PhDs, or for anyone in business, this is literally your manager who oversees the day-to-day of the operations of each of these clients. And under each of these managers are a bunch of analysts. So imagine in your lab, this is similar to having undergrads or rotational interns or so forth working with you. So they're the ones doing the legwork and being managed by you, or if you're the PhD, or in a company, you're like the shift manager. And so the teams can vary. It could be 3 analysts, like I mentioned, 2 analysts, 1 analyst. It could be even no analyst in terms of what you're trying to do. But this is pretty much the structure of how the teams are built in terms of what is happening there. And of course, the one thing you want to know is that the closer you are to being a partner, it's more about client management. It's about selling new projects, new clients, meeting with them, making sure that they're happy. And when you're at the bottom, it's more about the problem solving. So this is really interesting, because what you'll notice is that some people, when they leave consulting, is not because they were, let's say, let go, or if they didn't pick a promotion or whatever it is. For some people, they just don't like the client management part of it. For example, using another analogy, there's probably some of you who are PhDs on this call who really enjoy the problem solving aspects of the wet lab, if you will, but you don't like the management aspect of your day-to-day. So this is pretty much a lot of reasons why a lot of people like to leave consulting, is that they miss being able to solve the actual problem, versus now they have to be a salesman, essentially, just getting grants and so forth. And that's the different aspects of it. Or put another way, in business, imagine that this is like the business owner who is running a bakery. So this person is the one taking care of the back office, making sure we have clients, customers, and so forth. And this is the person actually baking. Sometimes you just love baking, but you don't really be a business owner. And so it's just something to keep in mind when you differentiate the role between a partner, a manager, and the analyst. So let's talk about the average day-to-day, now that you understand the hierarchy of how the firms work. So for a partner, you'll notice that their schedule is pretty much meeting with each of the teams to make sure that he's updated on what's going on. He'll have lunch with the client. He'll meet with each of the managers in terms of planning the day, planning what's next. He'll review some material before he has to present it to the client the next day. He'll have dinner and then review some more materials. So a lot of the partner's job, similar to the PI in your lab or to the CEO of a company, is not actually doing the work, but creating more work, and also making sure that the team, he has the best image. So the client is basically buying him, and he has the team in the back working with him. Next is this manager role. So the managers are the ones who are controlling and managing the day-to-day. So they'll work with one client, they'll meet with the client, they will meet with their team to make sure that everything is going. So you can see here for this typical manager here, she does a lot of meetings in the beginning. Again, a lot of client management meetings, and then meeting with the team to make sure that the work is aligned on what they're doing. So for a lot of you PhDs, this is like meeting with your undergrad to make sure that he or she is on the right track and then planning. And an analyst, what you'll notice, is the one doing the actual problem solving. So they're with the manager, structuring the problem, gathering the information they need, building the Excel model, building it into slides, and then sending it over. So a lot of the problem solving is the analyst. So there's a famous chart that gets passed around in consulting that basically says that the most value that's created is actually from the analyst when it comes to actual project. So the partner, unfortunately, will make the most money because he's bringing in the clients, so millions will go here. But the analyst, there's a joke that the analyst has the most knowledge. And in fact, if anyone should be presenting to the client, it should be the analyst, not the partner, who basically knows like the watered down, summarized version of it by the time it gets from the analyst to the manager to the partner. And that's pretty much the average day-to-day of a consultant. And so there's actually a couple of reasons that you're going to hate consulting. And I know most people like to talk about, well, you should love consulting before A, B, C reason. I like to talk about why you would hate consulting. The reason I do this is that I want to be completely upfront about what consulting is and reasons why people will not like it. The first reason is that your life isn't always yours. So there's some things that you can keep. Like, for example, when I was at Bain, I worked out every single day. And there were certain times where I would be able to protect other things, like dinners with my friends, going to a swim, or when I was at Bain, I was competing in the world championships of public speaking. So I was able to go to my practice and my competitions. But your life isn't always yours. So there's a lot of travel, for example, in consulting. So oftentimes, for example, if you're staffed on a project, even though let's say you're based in New York, your project is in Dallas, then you're going to be flying down to Dallas, let's say 4 to 5 days out of the week. And you might not be able to, if you have a significant other, have dinner with them every single day, or if you have a kid, to tuck their kid in at night. And this varies, of course. For example, one of my very first projects at Bain was in education. So if you guys know, I spent the 10 minutes talking about why I love education. And that was actually a really great project. We worked with a local school system to figure out how to retain teachers, even though they were losing teachers because they couldn't pay enough, as in they were the lowest income community in that area when I was working in San Francisco. And that project, pretty much we were on school time. We were working from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So I pretty much had a life. I worked out before 8 a.m. for a meeting client. And then after 6, I just had dinner with my friends and cooked dinner, and didn't realize I cooked so much during that case. So 8 to 6. And then there were other projects where my life wasn't mine, where I was starting off at 6 a.m. working. And I would work all the way until 3 a.m. for a client, for a situation. And that went on. So my day would basically be wake up, work at a client at 6 a.m., work all the way till 3 a.m., go home, and it'd be like 3:30 a.m. And then I would sleep from 3:30 a.m. to around 5 a.m. So now an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I wake up, and this is my personal choice, was I would work out, because that's one thing I wanted to protect. So I would work out. And then once I worked out, we'd go back to the client at 6 a.m. and I repeated that, and then went back to bed at 3:30. So sometimes your life just isn't yours when you're in consulting. So if you're someone who's looking for a structured 9 to 5 that you can go out, have dinner with significant others, go on dates, attend events, and so forth, consulting is not always the best career choice for you. In fact, it's a very terrible choice if you're trying to get predictability. Second is that the only thing that is permanent is change. So you might really love a project. For example, one of my projects was helping a biopharmaceutical company launch a life-saving drug into the world. And I love that project because I was able to measure the impact. I know how many lives we're going to save. I knew what it would mean for the company and so forth. So that was amazing. But of course, that project eventually ended after 3 months, and the plan was done, and they needed to go to trial and to be able to launch it. So then I was shifted over to my next project, which was helping a hedge fund manager make like $100 million more this year than he did last year. And then it's not as entertaining. So even if you love a team, imagine going to work and loving what you're doing, and then all of a sudden, 3 months later, getting a completely different manager, completely different team, completely different client, completely different work. So that's the one thing that if you're looking for stability, consulting is not for you. Of course, the pro of it is that if you hate for example, if you're in research and you hate your PI, it's like shifting over to another PI, which is pretty great. But again, if you love your PI, imagine losing that PI within 3 months or even 3 weeks. And the last thing is that you're rarely the smartest person in the room, and you're going to be known as a jack of all trades for when you start your career. So the reason I say this is that consulting is not for people who have a big ego and that you have to be the smartest person in the room. In fact, a lot of times you're going to be the dumbest person in the room, especially when you're first starting off. For example, the first time I was ever put on a project, it was about a semiconductor manufacturing process and how to improve it. And I'm over here thinking, what is a semiconductor? So I was pretty stupid in terms of that, and I was pretty much taking notes for 2 weeks before I got up to speed. And of course, by the time I would say I gained expertise in the semiconductor space, I was already shifted to another project, helping a tech company cut some costs within its R&D. And I was like, wow, I don't know much about medical devices, but I guess I have to learn now. And then by the time I get comfortable with that, I was shifted out to a private equity firm that was specializing in vitamins. I was like, well, I guess I get to be a vitamin expert. So you don't get to always be the smartest. In fact, there are rarely ever times when I felt like I was the smartest person in the room. And it's just when you finally feel like you're about to, you get shifted again. So again, if being the smartest person in the room and being really good at what you do all the time, being comfortable in your role is something that you love doing and brings you a lot of joy and satisfaction, this is not for you. So again, in consulting, life is not always your life. The only thing that's permanent is change, and that you're not going to be the smartest person in the room. But on the flip side, there are a couple things that why consulting might be a really great career for you. So first off is your job is to learn and to solve problems. How amazing is it to be able to get a good earning and to be able to learn and solve problems? For example, one of my first projects was helping a private equity company acquire a protein powder manufacturer. And I loved it because I was consuming protein powder, but I didn't know the nuances of it. So I got to do 3 weeks of just basically researching protein powders. And now I know everything about protein powders and which brands are the best, which ones, just all marketing and so forth. And then another time where I was able to learn about a hemophilia and just got to read so much about it, even though it was a new subject. It's like, it's always learning. It's almost felt like I was a student on every project. And I was able to solve huge problems with the knowledge I gained. The thing is that your impact is measured and you can actually see the impact of it. So you don't have to wait weeks, months, years to see the impact of any decades. So for example, with the first project I mentioned where I was working with a school system to retain teachers, it was so easy because every year I can go talk to the teachers and they will tell me which ones stayed and how they improved their student results. I literally could see the increase in academic scores. I can literally see how many teachers are staying versus leaving. And for the life-saving drug that I helped the biopharmaceutical company launch, I literally can see it in the news every time it passes trial or when it's launched or when it was launched, how many lives it was saving compared to its predecessor medicine. It's like, I could see all that. So if you're someone who really loves seeing and measuring the impact of what you're doing, then consulting is a great way to do it. And finally, if you want to keep your options open, as in you don't know quite what you want to do yet, leaving your options open and earning a high income is definitely something you'll be able to do, especially with the leaving options, because when you leave consulting, you come in as a very high role. So a common question I get asked, especially for PhD, masters and so forth, is that if I want to work in, let's say corporate, like for example, I want to work in Pfizer. Is it better to start at Pfizer and then work my way up, or go to consulting and then go in? Well, this short story is that if you work at the bottom of, let's say, a life science company like Pfizer and you go all the way up, it's going to take you years, 10 years, 15 years before you even make manager. But imagine being able to work in consulting for like 5 years and then coming in as a manager already, or a director, or whatever role you so choose. So that's pretty much the fast way, is that consulting fast tracks your way to any career, keeps your options open, and you earn a really high income. So for example, let's talk about some of the exit opportunities that are present. The short answer is that pretty much anything is available to you. So when I think about our own team, this is where our own team ended up. So a lot of them ended up working in nonprofits. People became school teachers. One person became a Hollywood writer and is writing some of the shows for Netflix that you're seeing. Become a politician, musician, artist, private equity. You can get private equity. You can go back to med school, go back to law school, become a professor. You can go to the military. You can become a corporate strategist. You can be a CEO. There's like so many things that you can do with a career in consulting that the windows are, and this is just some of the options of many that you can do. As in, literally, you can go anywhere from a CEO of company to a professor. In fact, I want to show you a story of two Angelas who show you the extremes of what you can do. So the top one, first person is Angela McDonald, who is a PhD, as you can see, and she worked at McKinsey and decided to stay. So now she's an associate partner on her track to becoming a partner. But look at her expertise, which is in private equity as well as pharmaceutical and medical practice products. So if she wanted to leave McKinsey ever, she literally could go and become an expert in the private equity space, or she can leave and go work at a Genentech or a Amgen or Pfizer, or wherever she wants to work, and come in at that high level. As a partner, she's pretty much going to come in at a senior level, a director, VP, and so forth. And she can choose to do that, even because of her PhD. And the fact that she is associate partner, she just started a career as well, which is super awesome. And then you have the bottom, who is Angela Duckworth, who's one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite researchers. And she was also a PhD and went to McKinsey and decided she wanted to actually become a professor. So she is a professor at University of Pennsylvania right now at Penn. And that is what the two extremes. You can literally continue to go back into academia for Angela Duckworth, or you can actually go and make a lot of money, like for example, in private equity for like Angela McDonald. So there's a very extreme of what you can do within it just as a PhD. So imagine what you can do with a master's, an undergrad, and so forth. So there's a lot of options here. And in case anyone's curious, so these are some of the stats, and you can just look these up as well, is that the average college degree at graduate in their lifetime will make about $2.5 million in earnings. So this is earnings. Again, obviously earnings are different from savings, but you can make earnings. For people who have PhD, a little bit more at 3 million. Again, reason why anyone asks is because, well, you're also not making a lot during the time that you're a student and a PhD and somebody doing your postdoc. So this is why the difference. But you actually edge out a little bit, and I'm assuming that the career path is a little bit more rewarding. But let's look at what happens when you have a PhD or a college degree on average, and you only have 2 or 3 years in consulting. You literally on average make about 8 million. As in, this is like aggregate. Obviously, it doesn't count all the school teachers or count all the private equities, which is like aggregate, about 8 million. So this is really extreme. So let's take the highest educated person here, is PhD, and let's actually compare them to the consulting. There's literally a $5 million delta here, difference in between lifetime earnings. Again, earnings are different from savings, but in a pure earnings, like starting a career in consulting, you're literally going to make like 5 million on average, more than just sticking out to a traditional PhD route. That's like super awesome in terms of the statistics. So if the exit opportunities and the money and the learning isn't a motivator, well, then consulting is probably not it. But again, just some statistics here. So you know that consulting is for you, as a summary, if you enjoy working in teams to solve hard problems and seeing the impact of your work. Second, you value learning, growth, and being challenged by new tasks. And you want to leave your options open for what you want to do long term while earning essentially up to $5 million more in your lifetime than the most educated of our population, the PhDs. So that's the first big idea I wanted to share with you today, is that consulting is for you if you enjoy learning at a fast pace about a variety of subjects, don't know what you want to do, and you just enjoy working with smart people to get immediate impact. Again, the whole idea that you are a nerd with ADHD.